Welcome all, and thank you for your attendance today. This webinar represents the first in a series of webinars over this year with regards to data management and migration with Adobe and Avid Solutions. Today's webinar will focus on the increasing threat of ransomware attacks within the media industry. We will look at the possible business impact you or your clients may suffer, and we'll run through a live presentation of a simulated attack and how we can help you recover quickly and efficiently. First of all, a couple of housekeeping items. We've put all of the attendees on mute. The session is being recorded and will be made available upon request. And if you've got any questions, please ask them via the chat window and we will answer your questions before we close the session. At this point, I would like to hand over to Paul to start the presentation.
Thanks, Steve. And without much delay, we're going to jump straight into this. We've seen a dramatic rise in ransomware attacks, and some of them have been absolutely devastating, very often specifically targeting the media and entertainment industry. What tends to happen is we know about the big ones because very often they're public-facing services. You can see the outage that they've had, and they're very well known about it. And there's been several huge attacks on public broadcasters. What you hear less about is the attacks that are going on everywhere else in post houses, production companies, and they tend not to be public knowledge. So the scale of the problem isn't particularly understood. And I just want to make one point here is we're not bashing Avid at all or Nexus at all, because it's a really good product, but it's just as liable to succumb to a ransomware attack as anything else. And as we say here, one common theme is the destruction also of the backup systems. And so the loss can be total. So as example, a customer that we've worked with over the last 6 months lost 7 Nexus systems and the backup, totaling 1.4 petabytes of data. And when I say the loss was total, it was in that case total. And we've since worked with them to put a better system in. The cost of the outage is huge. And what we've done, we've built a scenario here of what the experience is like following a ransomware attack. And now we also know of organizations that have been put in such bad situations, they're paying ransoms to save their business. So really, we want to turn it on its head and just think about it's not a case of if, it's a case of when. So we're going to talk about an attack timeline. And what I'd like you to do is think about this is happening to you, all right? And the consequences to you and the business. You're probably a business owner or a senior director in the company. And we're going to just build out that picture, and we'll just do that right now. So welcome to the First Class Post Company. We're based in Soho in London. And we're really busy. We're pitching on lots of productions. We're ingesting tons of material. We're actually working 2 shifts to keep up, which is great. We've got lots of productions going through and had more commissions recently. And some of these productions are quite big. They've been in post for a number of weeks. And we've got some investors have approached us and they're looking at investing in the business. So it's really going well, and I've never been personally busier, and the place is abuzz. So that's great. So day 2, we've got a major system outage, and we've got a really good tech team. They're trying to understand what's happened. We can't get into the Nexus, and we can't get into its backup. We can't log into the systems on premises, and we can't make today's deliveries. And we had 2 major projects that we wanted delivery, and we've already got the client on the phone. And of course, we don't want people to know that this is happening, because we don't want business that's in the pipeline walking to another facility. We find out actually it's a ransomware attack, and we've been asked to pay $1 million dollars in Bitcoin. All our Nexus workspaces are encrypted. Also, our database is encrypted, so single sign-on doesn't work, and it's causing all sorts of problems throughout the business. And yesterday, we asked freelancers not to come in because we couldn't do anything. And now the rumors of what's going on have gone through the freelance community, and it's reaching other facilities. I've reached out to our insurance company to see what our situation, how we're covered there. And I've also called an emergency board meeting to discuss the situation with the other directors. And terrible news today, the backup software was also encrypted. The backup was also encrypted. So we have no way of recovering all the work in progress which was on the Nexus. And that puts us in a terrible situation. We're going to default on deliveries. We've got contracts which we can't deliver against, and we've now also got a cash flow problem. We've got payroll, we've got vendors to pay, all sorts of stuff. I've approached the bank manager about a potential loan to make the ransomware payment, but they're not happy because if we pay it, there's no guarantee that the systems will be recovered. The insurance policy, which was quite a shock, it excludes ransomware. And it only covers on-prem systems, and the recovery of the systems, not the content. So we're in quite deep trouble at the moment. And now I've got the really difficult thing is I'm going to have to call our clients and say the production is now months behind schedule, even if we could start again today. So really, really painful, difficult situation. What would you do? Would you pay the ransom? And we've got a little poll coming up. Or would you not pay the ransom? So if you could just click on the poll, that would be great. And then I think that the common theme here is you'd much rather have a way out. And what we do with Marquis is give you a way out. So Simon, let's click on to the next slide. So what did we learn from this short experience is our IT systems didn't protect us. It doesn't matter whether you're a huge company or a small company, they didn't protect us. And largely it's because when people have put in business resilience or backups, they're intended to cover a network failure, disk failure, memory failure, power supply failure, not in active encryption. So very often the primary system and the backup system get encrypted. Our insurance doesn't cover us. So although we've got fantastic insurance cover, the policy doesn't cover us. Our cash flow's been immediately damaged. And of everything that we're doing in the business, the most business critical assets was the work in progress on the Avid Nexus. And it's sort of the sausage in the sausage factory. That's the content that we're producing that our clients pay for. Had there been a better way to protect work in progress, we could have recovered the productions and we wouldn't have suffered the same level of damage. It's clear now, with no mechanism to recover, we can't resume key productions. We've got months of work to recover the situations. We weren't ready for this, and we should have acted earlier to plan and mitigate the risks. Now, what I'll say now is the client that we spoke about that lost 7 Nexus systems went out to market, and they ultimately selected our software. And part of the reason for that was how our system is designed, and which is different to everything else that's in the market. So the first thing is we do run analytics, and we scan the Nexus system so we understand the relationship between all the projects, the workspaces, and the bins, and the content that's on there. We use that knowledge to make a very, very safe approach to the backup. For example, we know what a good file looks like, and we will not write an encrypted media file to the backup. It just can't happen because of the way the system works. So we always know that that's recoverable. The other thing is, if you think of the worst case scenario, is the facility is totally devastated. There is nothing that hasn't been damaged or disrupted by the encryption. So what you want is a no prior knowledge recovery from the backup. So for example, I'm going to work from home, or I'll go into another facility and I'll spin up some media composers there and start the production. Another piece of the acid test was how quickly can you restore a production from a devastating ransomware attack, and it needs to be the same day, not in weeks or months. With traditional systems, it's weeks or months. With our system, it's the same day, and Simon will show you that shortly. We have recovery tools which will enable you to be able to recover workspaces or projects to safe locations, and Simon will show you those shortly. We're not beholden to any storage technology, and clients can blend strategies between on-prem and in cloud storage, and that helps with a recovery strategy as well. And the main thing is we want to mitigate against uninsurable loss and the survival of the business. And what Simon's going to show you now is how we do that. Thanks, Simon.
Thanks, Paul, and hello, everyone. So I'll just go through some of the details of how the Workspace Backup, but I'll start with just mentioning again some of the areas that we will compare and how we'll contrast with the conventional solutions. So your traditional backups will not be taking any kind of analysis of the source nexus system, and they won't understand how the Avid media and how the projects work and how they work together. And as a result, we'll blindly back up the data, even potentially if it's encrypted by ransomware. So there's always a great risk of ruining a perfectly good backup in that scenario. And at the point of restoration, it's going to monolithically restore the data, potentially even if it's been encrypted by the ransomware in that backup. So the entire system will have to be recovered, and that could take anything from weeks and months. And there's no way of accessing that backup at an individual level, to project or bin level. So there's no flexibility in the restoration system, even by type or by location of where you can bring things back to. So wouldn't it be better if we can work out a better way of handling the Avid backups? In this case, bake this on a tool that understands the Avid and can intelligently process what needs to be backed up. So it can protect media from ransomware by design and do not reback up any potentially corrupted media files, and also intelligently manage the contents of the backup and make sure that that is handled cleanly and precisely, and then give you some fast and flexible restoration options. And we do that with Workspace Backup, and it's the only tool for backups that is specifically designed to work for Avid systems. And our Workspace Backup does this by going through and analyzing the source nexus and understanding that relationship between media files and project files, and then backs up all of the files from the source. Now, we'll only ever back up the original media file in the and put that into that backup, and we'll never copy an encrypted media file and put it back into that backup and replace the good file that's in there. We will not do that. And we'll also include a version controlled backup of the project files to give you timestamp based versions of the projects over time. And then we can back this up to choice of locations or devices. And if you go to something like an S3 object storage, then there's the option there to support now the object locking functions within S3 to give you an extra level of control and protection. And in that case, we can set retention periods per asset as we're writing them into the backup. And then we can run regular tidy operations on that backup we've created. So we can remove assets that were deleted from the source system after a configured retention period, or after the retention period configured for the object locking has expired. And then we'll make sure there's flexible job configurations and the policy management for those retentions. So you're not set with a single setting for your entire system. You can break it up into different job configurations and different tidy configurations depending on what you need. And then when we want to bring things back, we offer two independent recovery tools. So we have the Workspace Restore, which allows you to restore files at a workspace level. This will bring everything back and it will restore to the original workspace, or will remap to a new workspace or a different workspace. And it's an intelligent restore. If the destination is empty, then obviously we'll restore the whole workspace. If there's still content on it, perhaps if you only lost a few files, then we'll only restore the missing files. And then we also have the project restore application, which allows you to choose a version of a project file or just a selection of bins within the project and bring that back. And in this case, we can restore to any location. So you can bring it back to your original system. You just want to come back to the existing system, or we can actually restore this to a completely different system and give you a version of the project that's running on a clean, protected new system to get you up and running again quickly in the event of a failure. And both of these tools can be used on your system at the same time. So you can be rebuilding your workspace while you're also bringing your project down and getting it working again. So I'll give you a few demos on how to recover from a backup. And in this case, this is coming from an S3 object storage. And I'll go through 3 areas. So I'll go a quick look through the configuration of the Workspace Backup job and how we manage the backup. Then I'll go through the 2 direct recovery strategies that we'll show. Firstly, we'll bring content back to Media Compose within a full interplay system. So we'll actually simulate a failure on the Nexus and recover lost files back to an interplay managed Nexus from the S3 backup using our project restore application and show how easy to get things back online again. And then I'll go through a direct recovery to a completely separate Media Composer. So we'll restore the project from the S3 backup to a standalone Media Composer running on local storage. But first, we'll go with the configuration. Now, the application is very simple to configure and set up. First off, we just need to tell ourselves where we're going to put the content. In this case, I have an S3 object storage configured, and that's standard S3 configuration details, and we can detail the bucket that we're going to be working with. Obviously, multiples can be set up, so you can have a choice of destinations. And then we'll configure the project locations. So this is where the project files will be saved in your system. And this allows us to do the cross-check when we're doing the backup, to look for the media files and look to see what's used where and see which projects are using the media files. And then we'll put those projects into the backup as well and create that version controlled project level backup. And to actually schedule the job itself, we just add a Workspace Backup job. We'll see the list of workspaces we have mounted on the local computer where the service is running, and we can choose which workspaces to include in the job. I could include them all, or I can just include a selection depending on how I want to configure my system. In this case, we'll just have one workspace. And then we'll choose where to put the backup. In this case, I've got my object storage configured, so we'll choose that. If I had multiple configured, we'd see them all. And I'll also add some exclusions. So these are certain things that we can choose to leave out of that backup job. So in this case, I'll make sure that we don't copy any executable files into the backup. And obviously we can do that for file patterns or for locations and just give you some extra level of control on what's going to be put into the backup. And then we'll go through and work out how often we want this job to go. So in this case, let's have it go every day. So we're in every day of the week, and we'll set it in the evenings after people have gone home. So let's go for 10 o'clock at night. And then we'll save that. So that job is now set, and we'll run every day at 10 o'clock. I could always run it immediately and run it manually as well. We have that option. That's now going to go. So that will create the backup. The other action we'll do is then tidy the backup. This allows us to go in, choose the backup that we're working with. In this case, I've just got the one configured at the moment. And this is where we'll reset the retention period. So if I set a retention period of 14 days, this means when we run this job, we'll go and see if any files have been deleted from the source. And if they have, we'll remove them from the backup after 14 days. If we're working with the object locking in S3, then this will also update retention periods for any objects we find that are still present. Then we'll set when we want this to go. And in this case, we'll just have it go once a week just to run the tidy. So I'll get it to go at a weekend. This time we'll have it go first thing in the morning. So that's given us the tools to both set our backup and to manage that backup. And it really is that simple. My system for that workspace is now protected. So the next action I'll show you is how to get things back. And the first one we'll do is the process to recover files from our backup to a Nexus. So in this case, we'll show the deletion of files from the Nexus essence. And we'll do this underneath the active Media Composer project. And then we'll use our Project Restore application to recover just the missing files from the latest backed up version. The Nexus workspace and the projects using the media have been regularly backed up to the object storage. So the workspace is in the backup, and I have multiple project versions available. So here we have a very simple project running in Media Composer. So we have some media files in a sequence. The files are all held on our Nexus workspace, and as you can see, the files are all online and they're all playable. So now I'll simulate a failure by going to a folder on the workspace that's holding X files, and I'll manually delete them. So here's my folder, here's some SS files, and we'll delete them. And as soon as I switch back to Media Composer now, we'll see that all those files have gone offline. So the Media Composer cannot find the files because they're not there anymore. In most cases, recovering from this would require a lot of work. You'd have to find out which essence atoms have gone by going through the project. You'd have to identify all of the file names, then search through the backup if you have one, and try and match those file names, and then try and individually copy back every single file if you are able to find them, which is not an easy task. In this case, we'll actually just open our Project Restore application and we'll bring them straight back. Project Restore allows us to connect into the backup and browse through the projects that we've taken in those backup jobs, all held in the same folder structure as on the source, so it'll be easy to go through and find the project you want to work with. And then we can choose which version to bring back and any level of extra detail. So you can choose to bring back a whole project, or you can bring back just individual bins. You can set the latest version, or maybe you want to go back to a slightly earlier version. And then we just choose where to bring the project files and where to bring the media. In this case, I'm coming back to the same system. So I'll actually go back to exactly the same workspace. So I'm actually looking at this case to go through that workspace, find the files that are no longer there, or identify the files that are no longer there, and bring just those back from the backup. So as soon as I hit start, we'll process the job, we'll work out which files are missing, and we will bring back just those files. And as soon as it is completed, I'll be able to switch back to my Media Composer. And there we go. All of those files are back online immediately. So we're able to bring everything back. It's a really simple and easy task to do at a project level. And we did that all underneath Media Composer without having to do any restarts, any closing and reopening of the project. It just happened automatically. And it really is as simple as that. The next demo I'll show will go through using the same tools, but in this case, we'll restore an entire project to a completely different location. I'll show how simple it is to get a project and its media back online, even when the original system is not available. In this case, we are restoring from the same S3 backup now to a standalone Media Composer running on a laptop in another location. It has the Project Restore installed, and it's been given access to the S3 bucket with the backup. But this system has no access to the originating Avid system or the original Nexus. So here I now have a standalone Media Composer, which is running on a laptop. It's a clean system, and it's not seen the project or its media before. If I open the Project Restore application, we have that access into the same backup, so I can go through and browse through and find the project I want to work with again. And again, I can choose the version levels. I can choose how much of the project to bring back, whether I want to bring individual bins or the entire project. In this case, we're bringing everything back. So I want to get a complete set of the project. And we choose where to bring it back to. So I'm going to bring it back to my local machine and my local project location. And in this case, for the media, we need to move that to a new location. The original workspace isn't going to be in this system. So I'll map it to a local workspace, which you can see here has automatically been done. I'll see the list of the workspaces I've got available locally. In this case, I just have my C drive because I'm just running completely standalone. If there were any attached drives on this system, they'd show in this list. But I just have my C drive. And now as soon as I start the job, we'll start bringing that project and the media back. Now in this case, we're bringing everything back. So all the media files and the project files, and writing them into that local storage. In this case, as soon as it's completed, I can go back to my media composer, refresh the projects, and there's my new project. If I open that, we now have the project file, and we have all the media. And importantly, the media will all be online. So now from the editor's point of view, they can carry on working. And you can see how simple it is to use a project-aware backup to get you back online, and also very importantly, working from where you'd left off. So you'll be picking up from the last point that we took a backup. This is even if the original system or the entire facility is not available, you can be back up and running again. Okay, I shall hand back to Paul. That completes my demos. Thank you.
Thanks, Simon. Another cracking demo. And I'd just like to make the point, make a quick point at this moment. They weren't just two random demos. If you remember, I said there was a client who lost 7 Nexus systems and the backup. They issued an ITT to the market, and bearing in mind they'd been through a total loss experience, and these tests were 2 ACID tests, which they put into the ITT. And I think there were 6 vendors, we were the only company that responded, and we were the only company who could do that presentation live, because the other vendors would have taken weeks to do the same thing, assuming the backup hadn't been encrypted. So let's kick into the conclusions. Avid is so important to a production company, and the work in progress on the Nexus is business critical. If we lose that, it's such a big problem. As we said before, an irrecoverable ransomware attack is an uninsurable risk. I don't think any insurance company would take it on. And we didn't wait weeks or months to get a recovery. As Simon showed you, he actually did it in minutes. Okay, a bigger project would maybe take an hour or so, but at least you've got that project up and running and you can deliver it to a client. The things that we do different is our analytics, and that by definition, by what we do, stops encrypted media files being written to the backup. As Simon showed, what we do is ultra granular, ultra fast, and it means productions can get back up and running same day. And where that would have typically been used is if somebody had erroneously deleted something, and they say, well, actually, I know it's in the backup, I can recover that from 2 days ago. But actually now that capability has become really important in the case of ransomware attacks. Traditional DR systems really are unlikely to protect against an attack, not really generally architected to do that, and the recovery times are extremely poor. If any of you went to the recent DPP leaders briefing event in London recently, data security was the #1 item on all of the CTO senior people's agendas that attended that meeting. And we're not talking about unobtainium here. Workspace Backup is really cost effective. It scales up and it also scales down. So even a small post facility can benefit from it at a really reasonable cost. And what we'd say is, we see people all the time who are on the wrong end of a ransomware attack, and would really rather be on the right end and help you protect your work in progress now. And so, Simon, I think if we go to the next slide, here's some customers. This is just a subset of customers who use Workspace Backup in different parts of their business. So you can see big studios, big broadcasters, post houses, banks, different companies who are really originally bought the software to protect against fire and floods and other disasters, but really Workspace Backup's come into its own in the context of ransomware attacks. So with that, I'd like to hand back to Steve.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Simon. And just to let you know the results from the poll, 25% of you said you would pay the ransom and 75% said you wouldn't. So I would imagine the 75% is hoping for some kind of backup plan or workflow to come into force. I think that's all we have time for now. So I would like to thank everyone for their attendance today. Also, thank you, Paul and Simon, for their participation as well. And of course, the recording will be made available. Just get in touch with us using the details, the email details that you've already been sent, and we'll ensure that gets out to you. Thank you very much again for your attendance, and also I hope you look forward to the next webinar. Thank you very much.